Welcome to Grow with Purpose. This is the Axiom podcast where we talk about the work that Axiom's doing in the field with the clients that we work with, try to give you some stories, some real life insights as we talk about principles. And I'm in the studio with Mike LeBoux today. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me, Joey.
So we're excited to talk about something that you coined. This is a term that came up in one of our team meetings, from laborers to leaders. So we're going to do 3 episodes on this topic and break it up into 3 parts. But just give us a little bit of a background on where this laborers to leaders concept came from.
So growing up, my dad is an electrician, and I watched him. You know, he would work. He worked on Broadway, and he would do shows, and he would bring all of the equipment in, and he'd get these shows set up. And I noticed a very strong transition in him as he started to go from being one of the crew guys to a leader on the crew. Then he started leading the crew guys. And then eventually he became a production electrician where he was leading the entire install. He was bringing everything from organizing the trucks to organizing all of the equipment to organizing the installation and running the crews and all of the things into the theaters. So I watched him make this transition. I watched his communication style change. I watched, I would go to work with him. I watched how his interactions with the workers were, and it changed as he adapted and stepped into those leadership roles. I watched the adjustments that he made, and I studied how he did what he did. And now I look back, and it probably wasn't easy for him. It's definitely each level has different challenges. But I learned a lot from watching that, and I see the same thing in the field today, whether we're working with different types of agencies, whether it's a white collar, whether it's blue collar, but I think we're going to focus more on blue collar today, talking about people out in the field like my dad.
Yeah, and the laborers to leaders does have that blue collar feel to it. Certainly not limited to that, because
Definitely
white collar businesses, I came out of a white collar world and accounting firms and kind of CFO consulting type stuff. And we would see this too. You see the person who's a great tax manager, they get promoted to partner, where now they're supposed to lead a tax department, and they still see themselves as the expert here. And it's kind of like, do as I do, not as I say, or do as I say, not as I do type of thing.
Yeah.
And that department just never gets off the ground. And a few years later, we're talking about buying them out from their partnership interests. So it's that shift is what we're going to talk about today. And we call it kind of the laborer to leader paradox, where the thing that has made you most successful in your job and has gotten you to the position of being a leader and being in charge and having more responsibility is the same thing that's working against you when it comes to being a leader. Because, and we'll go to the blue collar side. Well, actually this applies in spades on the white collar side too, because these people have spent thousands of hours, thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars getting technically proficient, becoming an expert in their field.
Yeah.
And they get promoted into a leadership position, and they've had zero investment of time or money in the skill set that it takes to become an effective leader.
Yeah.
And when we say this, you and I had this conversation a couple weeks ago to a couple of owners of a blue collar business. And when we said that you've invested tons of money in their technical training, but no money in their, and you just see the heads nod across the table like, holy cow, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And so that's what we want to talk about today. And when we talk about moving someone from a production or a technical position into a leadership position, and that doesn't go well, there's a tremendous cost to the business. So talk about that for a second. What does it look like? And hopefully we don't trigger some business owners out there with some PTSD, or maybe this hits a little bit close to home, but you need to hear it.
Yeah.
What's the cost of the business of not making that transition well?
Yeah. Well, to lay the foundation, Alan Lloyd McGinnis wrote a book called Bringing Out the Best in People. And what he talks about is when somebody starts working, 80% of their job is technical, and 20% of it or less has to do with dealing with people. As they step into a management role, it becomes 50-50, where then now they have to have those soft skills, those people skills, and they have to have the technical skills. And as soon as you step up into leadership roles, C-suite executives, it's 80% people and 20%, So it's that transitionary period when you're bringing someone out from the field, your best guy from out in the field, he's good at working on whatever they're working on. All of a sudden, you're removing him. He's your most productive worker. And you say, oh, he's the most productive worker. He's a leader. So let's move him into more of a management role. So you're pulling him out of the field, and now he needs to lead. And you and I talked about this earlier. How they lead or how they interact with the people on that team is really important. So the business owner is like, oh my gosh, I want them in the field because they're producing, but I also want them helping me in the office get these things organized. Or instead of doing the work, he might be able to lead 2 teams. Maybe he can oversee 3 teams and make sure that they're doing quality work as quality control, right? So they're really gambling is really what the business owner is doing. They're gambling on growth. And I call it gambling because if you're not equipping this leader on purpose, they don't know. It's not like you give them a promotion and a raise and their brain goes, "Oh my gosh, now I have to do this way.
I'm getting paid to do something different."
Yeah. They don't understand. They don't understand, and now the business owner's frustrated because you need to be doing X, Y, and Z, but they haven't equipped them to do those things.
And business owners looking at a financial statement where production in the field is down because I lost my best guy in the field.
Yes.
Production across my 3 teams is down because I don't know why. I thought this guy could do it. Apparently, I made a bad decision. Yeah. And so they're feeling the pain on both sides. I've lost the productive resource, and I haven't realized the benefit of the leadership resource that I just implicitly felt like was going to work, given evidence of great production value.
Well, what you said earlier, Joey, why don't you talk about that? You said when they get promoted, they're going to respond usually one of 2 ways to their crew. So I know you were mentioning that earlier. So why don't you talk through that?
One of the things we see is you get promoted out of the field, and you either you want, these were the guys you work shoulder to shoulder with, and you want to maintain that relationship. They're your friends a lot of times, and your families know each other, and you hang out and barbecues on weekends and that kind of stuff. And you're like, well, that's important to me. I've always been told that, it's about more than just work, and, relationships are important. I want to honor that. And so you try to, be this friend now to a group that you're responsible for and that you need to hold accountable. Yep. And then you have the flip side of the coin where they go the complete opposite way, which is now I'm in a more authoritative position and I need to raise this barrier, and it's my job to make these guys do what they're supposed to do. Yep. And there's definitely a middle ground in that, but I would even say it's a matter of finding the middle ground. It's just the fact that you have to learn a new skill set in order to be effective in that new spot. And you don't have to worry about being the friend or being the tyrant. Like if that's the 2 choices you feel like you have to make, you don't even have to pick somewhere in the middle, right? We would say you're ineffective in both of those ways, and you're going to be ineffective in the middle. There's a whole different, it's like 3D chess. You've just moved off the 2-dimensional board and you've had to look at it from a completely different angle.
Yes.
That's all. Yeah. Right. But, what should be encouraging is whether you're in a white collar technical trade or when you're in a blue collar skilled labor trade that's required a high level of technical capacity, you've put in the hard work. I've learned this something about myself years ago, where I'd be starting a new project. It could be a very complex research project. It could be a new piece of software. It could be a new program. We were launching at Axiom. In early days, you just feel lost. Yep. You're like, I can't get my bearings. Everything's confusing. It's this big ball of spaghetti. Yeah. And I learned over time, that's natural. That's going to happen. Yep. I'm just going to work through it. And there comes a tipping point where everything kind of snaps into place. You're not there yet, but you do have clarity on where you still have to move forward, what's not going to be necessary, where you can spend time and where you don't have to spend time. And all of these folks who've proven technically proficient, they've gone through some version of the same thing. Absolutely. Where they've worked through the hard, trying time of trying to get that clarity. And so we're able to sit down with them and say, hey, this is a new skill set and this is what it's going to feel like. Yeah. But I know you're going to be successful because it's just putting in the work to learn the skills. The same way you had to learn how to repair this massive chiller or program this piece of software or do this complex tax return or this legal contract. Yeah. Remember what that felt like? Oh, it was hell. Like every day, I was worried about getting fired because I didn't know what I was doing. Exactly. And the leadership's going to feel like
Welcome
that.
back.
Yeah. It's 20 years later,
Yeah.
and, old dogs can learn new tricks.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of, are you willing to put in the work?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I'm ready to put it. Because everybody at this level, everybody has proven they're not afraid of doing hard things.
Exactly.
But we throw them into a hard situation with no equipping, and it's not that they don't want to do it. They just don't know how.
Yeah.
And there's some very simple ways to get over that hump. A lot of, some of the coaching and stuff we've talked about on previous episodes.
Absolutely.
Well, we talked about the cost of the business. You've lost the productive resource. You're not getting the leverage in the office. What's the cost to the business owner personally of failing to navigate this transition from a laborer to a leader? What is it costing a business owner?
Well, worst case scenario, I mean, you have someone that you've promoted, and you're either going to have to put them back in the field to fix everything, and then hire someone else.
Oof.
Right. So now you've added further to you're hoping to save on overhead, and now you're increasing your overhead because you're going to have to hire from the outside to bring someone in that's going to be able to lead these guys that doesn't have the relationships. So or you try to keep them in a spot where they don't feel comfortable, or they're not kind of getting into gear, and they leave. They'll go to another place and see where they could just kind of do what they did previously, and it costs you time. Your productive capacity has gone down because your people out in the field aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and you're frustrated.
Yeah,
you're and it's not talking about the stress that you feel on your way home, on your drive home.
Yeah,
looking at those numbers, looking at those financials.
It strikes me we should not be asking the business owner what the cost is. We should probably be asking the business owner's spouse what the cost is, because they're the one that deals with it at the end of the day, when it's like, I can't believe we gave this person a promotion and they're not doing their job, and now I got to go hire somebody else.
Yep.
That stress of, every business owner is used to setback.
Yep.
None of us like them, none of us want them, but it's just part of growing a business, trying new things. Some things are going to work, some things aren't. But this is a different kind of setback.
Yes.
Where this is one of my most trusted people. I've given them this I feel like I've given them the opportunity. I've poorly equipped them, but I feel like I've given them the opportunity.
Yeah.
And now I have to regroup. I have to wipe that slate clean. And you can't. Like the business owner realizes, to your point earlier, moving them back into the field, that carries a ton of baggage.
Absolutely.
Bringing in a new person, and I've seen this happen too before, where it's like, well, we'll leave them in the office, but we'll compensate for their lack of performance as a leader by bringing in somebody new from the outside.
Yep.
And that, people are smart, right? They see exactly what's happening. So there's baggage there in terms of lost credibility for the person who got promoted.
Yeah.
And then the third path that we probably see most often is the business owner stays way more involved in that, what the leadership role they were hoping to hand off, and they're compensating by shrinking their bandwidth even more, because now, if you're bringing a new person in, there's a training load early on, and the business owner's like, I'll sign up for that, no problem. But if you're compensating, you're going to be doing that forever. Yep. Like that person's never going to get through that phase without becoming a better leader, which, if you've made this decision and found yourself in this spot, you're probably realizing, maybe I'm not as equipped to raise up leaders as I need to be.
Exactly.
You're going to need some outside help with that. So let's continue the circle. We've talked about the cost of the business. We've talked about the cost of the business owner. Let's talk about the individual for a second. We just did a little bit. That person who, now the risk is, I have to go back into the field, get in a truck, I have to go back to preparing tax returns, have to go back to whatever.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that person and what's the cost to them, short and long term.
Yeah. You could think of a million different examples of people not making the sports team, or people not, their friends are going to go do this, and then, they're not able to do it. They feel left out. You got a very capable person that, with the right coaching and the right encouragement, that if they're willing, they've already proven they're willing to work hard. Mm-hmm. It's just that they need guidance to develop this new skill set, to develop this new tool. They need patience, they need time, and they need guidance that they're going in the right direction. And if they're not getting the support, how many times have we heard people talk about, I was supposed to do this, but I got no support. Nobody was there to help me. Nobody was there to answer my questions. Nobody was there to do this or that. And they failed, and now they feel terrible. they feel like they let themselves down. They feel like they let the company down. They're going to be dragging. And you have a perfectly capable person here that all they do is beat themselves up now. They beat themselves up, and they're now that you've lost a productive capacity. You've lost, because I have this conversation. I could recall this conversation like verbatim what happened. I was in a meeting with a one-on-one, and I was talking to one of the leadership team, and I said, what's the biggest bottleneck for this company? And he said, people, onboarding. Because we cannot onboard somebody that is what we're looking for. We have to build them. We have to turn the people that we onboard into productive employees. We have to teach them how to do this. We have to teach them how to do this. We have to teach them. Nobody comes into this company prepared to do all of these things. We have to equip them. So if we can't retain them or we can't train them, it is a massive bottleneck for what we're trying to accomplish. And when we're talking to the business owners about these individuals, they have invested in these people because they don't just have the technical training. There's a wherewithal, almost an instinct, where if you have a plumber or if you have somebody that works in a custom home builder, you put them in a house, they can see things that the average person won't see. Intuition that they've developed over 1, 2, 3, 5 years of working in the trade that they just have. Mm-hmm. And you can't just give that to the new hire. It's something that has to be trained. So that part, you have to keep that in mind. You've already invested all of this technical training into this person. It's worth going the extra mile, going above and beyond to make sure that they make this transition successand That is extremely important.
I've talked to some of these leaders, a year too late, I'll say. And it's usually like with a new client that we get involved with, we do a lot of one-to-one interviews with all the key leaders and key employees, some of the longest term employees that may still be in the field, but like looking for where have we come from? What's let's ground us as your outside advisor in this company and what the last 20 years have looked like, because you've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
But I remember talking to one of these leaders, and he had been promoted into the spot about a year prior. And I could just tell he was not doing well. He wasn't big on the company. He wasn't, and I'm thinking this is somebody who, we just made a bad hire here, didn't do our due diligence in trying to align culture fit.
Yeah.
And so I asked a little bit more about his background. Turned out he'd been there for quite a long time, and he had been in the field and got promoted. And it was obviously wasn't doing well in his current position, but I said, well, tell me about your time. You've known this owner for the last 10 years. Tell me about what it was like working earlier days.
Yeah.
And he lit up, and he was just talking about how he was bringing new products because he'd kind of come from the industry. He'd been using a product that they'd never used before. So he got to introduce that. He got to train everybody on how to install it. He was constantly making recommendations. The piece of software that they had just moved off of, they worked with for like 6 or 7 years. He was the guy who introduced that piece of software that got them a lot more efficient. He talked about this kind of leaderboard that they had that was production against quotas, and he was always at the top of the leaderboard. And he wasn't bragging, but you could just see this pride.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, here's a guy who used to go home feeling really good about being excellent at what he did every day.
Yeah.
And for the last year, he's gone home thinking that he sucks. He's terrible at what he's doing. And, I've just felt like, man, what a year out of this guy's life that we'll never get back. We can compensate, we could pay him for the lost year, right? We could invest in training for him and get him grown as a leader. Never going to get that year back. And never going to get, but we don't know. I have no idea what that year looked like for his family.
Absolutely.
We're never going to get that year back for the family. So the cost, I would just speak to business owners for a second. And we won't work with a business that doesn't put a very high priority on their employees, right?
Absolutely.
If it's all about 100%. The owner, it's about you and your ego, like we're going to disengage before we ever engage, right? That's going to be a pretty short relationship. So it goes without saying that most, if not I'd say all the clients we work with, most of the clients, prospective clients that we talk to, they really care about these people.
Yeah.
But this is an area that I continually see as a blind spot for business owners. They don't realize the toll that it's taking on the person with this poor transition. And you talked about timing earlier. We do recruiting for clients.
Yeah.
That's something that we've had to do as, again, another service that just had to get added because the teams are growing, and we weren't terribly impressed with the recruiting companies that clients were working with. So we said, okay, we're going to bring this in-house.
Yeah.
And when people look at our recruiting process, they're pretty taken aback at how extensive the interview process is. But the other thing is we won't start until we have what we call a job blueprint, which is our expectations for success in this position. And it goes all the way through to give the actual KPIs so the person themselves can be able to measure their own performance and know whether they're being successful or not. Yeah. And it starts there, and then it goes we're not done until we've built a 90-day onboarding plan for that person, including the end of that 90-day, let's look back and see how well we did onboarding this person. And so if we're willing to do that for a brand new hire that we have nothing invested in yet, right? That we don't know is a great cultural fit, that hasn't proven themselves, I see so many times we'll do that for that person, but we won't do that for the person who's worked here for 12 years and has proven themselves invaluable, great culture fit, the person that we want to lead. And there's no thought given to what are the new expectations? How can I put those down on paper, give them numbers that they can track themselves to see if they're being successful? I know what their first week is going to look like in this position, their second week, all the way through their 13th week in this position. I know what the onboarding plan is for this new role. And I'm going to commit to sit down with everybody else on the team and them to say, how successful were we in getting Joey onboarded into this new position? And I would just say, like, it seems, as we talk about it, it seems, obviously everybody should do that. Yeah. But how many times do we walk into a situation with a client and we're just in the normal course of our rhythms in strategic planning, execution, and it's like, we promoted so-and-so into this spot. Yeah. No job blueprint, no onboarding plan, no plan to look back and see how successful we were in 90 days. So there's some kind of brass tacks things that you need to be doing to set the person up for success.
Well, if people don't have a job blueprint, they just do what they want to do. What are you doing today? I'm doing this. Is that what you need to be doing? Well, that's what I want to do. And they'll naturally do the things that they're good at. Yeah. And they will avoid the things that they're not good at, even if they have to do it. So having clear expectations, having KPIs so that they can measure their own effort, you should know if you're doing a good job. You shouldn't have to ask somebody. You shouldn't be waiting for your quarterly review saying, I wonder if I'm doing a good job.
Quarterly? Annual?
Your annual review?
Biannual?
Yeah. So, it's just, you should be able to measure. And I think that gives a lot of confidence. It puts it into the employee's hands and says, okay, here's what I need to do. Here's how I can do a good job. And that prevents them from going home every day feeling like they suck at their job. Yeah. And I think the other part about what you're saying about the recruiting earlier, we know the leadership teams. Like, we know the teams, we know what they need. So we not only bring on board these people, but like, we have to deal with them. And that's the other part.
That's the thing I didn't say. The reason that we really decided to do this is because we have to live with this person for the next 10 years.
So we are very careful because we're the ones that are like, we're going to have to not only do the onboarding, we're dealing with them for exactly like what you said. Mm-hmm. So like, we're almost building the team that we know the team. We're putting the pieces in place that we know is going to get this company 5-10 years down the road successful. And that's what's fun about the recruiting part.
And I'll say from a self-interest standpoint, we're picking the person that's going to make our job maybe a little bit easier too. But
Absolutely.
Easier for the business owner and the rest of that leadership team. So we've talked about the cost of this paradox, moving people from laborers to leaders. And what does that cost? What's the answer? Like, we got 2 more episodes. Where are we going on this? Like, how do you do this well?
Yeah. So I think and I'll tell a story in the next podcast. I'm going to cue that up. I'm going to cue that up for the next one. But it's how these people see themselves. It's how they see themselves. That's really, really important. It's how they think and how they see themselves. And then the other part about it is, what do they need to do? because they know how to do their job now really well. But now that they've stepped into this new position, they don't know what to do. And it's not as simple as maybe turning a wrench. They're going to have to they're going to have to, we call it upskill. They're going to have to upskill. They're going to have to add a couple new tools to their tool belt to figure out how to do their job better. And they're going to have to know how to use them. So they're going to have to know how to think about it, and they're going to know how to do their job. And that's where equipping these people comes in.
Awesome. Well, that's a great segue to the next episode. So join us next week for that next episode. Everything that Mike's been talking about and that we've been discussing is going to be in a leadership guide for this episode, as are all of our episodes. You can download the leadership guide from the show notes. You can also go to the website, subscribe to the leadership guide. It'll come into your inbox every single week as we release new episodes. And that's just going to remind you, hey, there's a new podcast that dropped on Grow with Purpose. I'd like to go check it out. The other thing about the leadership guide, we say this in our consulting work with clients, it all comes down to execution. It really doesn't matter how much we whiteboard, how much we talk about this stuff. What are we actually doing with it? So we build the leadership guides to have actionable content that you can actually take back to your leadership team. And you can use it right out of the box. You don't have to change a thing. You can just, if you do a lunch and learn, if you want to do a training session, that's what they're built for. We want to see you use this stuff. And we also want to get this message out. So you can help us by rating and reviewing the podcast so that more people hear about it. We believe small business should change the world around it. But in order for that to happen, more people have to hear about this stuff. And that can happen if you'll help us with ratings and reviews on the podcast. So help us out that way. We'd really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.